Sometimes video editing can start feeling like you're trying to put together a puzzle where all of the pieces are slightly different shades of the exact same color. What I mean by that is it can be really difficult to keep the process running smoothly. So in this one, I wanted to share a few bits and pieces of advice that I've picked up over the years that could potentially help you whenever you start feeling stuck while editing a project. So this first one is something that I'm expecting a lot of people are gonna roll their eyes at, but just bear with me. I hope that most of you can agree with me that when you go to cook some sort of meal, you don't just grab random ingredients left and right and throw them all together hoping that you end up with something that's actually edible. Unless you're one of those people, in which case that's just really unfortunate for you. But the way to do it would probably be to find some sort of recipe, plan ahead, gather all of the ingredients that you need, and then think about what order you need to combine everything in. And I absolutely think that way of thinking should be something that carries over into video editing as well. Over the years, I've kind of realized that the editing process actually starts way before you even sit in front of the computer. And the best way to set yourself up for a good edit is a good plan. I would say that the first and most important thing that goes into that is trying to figure out what you're actually trying to do with the video itself. What story are you trying to tell? What tone are you going with? What type of audience is it for? And how do you want it to affect them? You're obviously gonna approach editing something for a corporate client in a completely different way than something like a crime documentary. Then it's gonna be stuff like making a shot list, because first of all, that way you're gonna make sure that you have enough variety in your footage to be able to choose from later so that the edit doesn't get boring. But also because having something like a shot list or a storyboard is gonna make it a lot easier to imagine how everything has to cut together later. You've got transitions, camera movement, camera angles, and motion graphics. Then you've got music choice and how that's gonna fit into the theme of the video, or if you even want there to be music in the first place. That way you're not gonna need to think about all of that right when you sit down to start editing, and you're already gonna have that framework set up for you that you can follow. And because of that, you're not gonna have to resort to improvising absolutely everything, which is usually one of the reasons why people end up getting stuck and making mediocre videos that have a ton of problems in them. My second piece of advice is something that I personally had a really hard time with back when I was still in the very early stages of my journey of learning video editing. Sometimes you might find yourself spending way too much time on a segment of a video that just isn't coming together how you want it to. But then you just keep pushing and trying to brute force it because you feel like if you don't get that thing done first, you can't move on to the next thing. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm speaking from experience here. There have been moments when I spent hours, if not days, on a short sequence because I know what I want it to be like, but then I end up not liking it for whatever reason. And I would get frustrated to the point where I would want to just punch my monitor and delete the entire thing. But in those moments, it's really important to be able to take a step back. And you can either go and work on a different part or aspect of the video, or just entirely take a break and come back to it later. In my experience, a lot of the time, if a segment of a video isn't coming together the way you want it to, it's not just because it's straight up bad or anything. Instead, it might just be that you've been looking at it for way too long and now you can't really think about it objectively. Or maybe it's something that you need to see in the context of everything else to realize that it actually does fit in correctly. The point I'm trying to make is that if you just keep brute forcing something that clearly isn't working, the only thing you're doing is spending time making things worse. But instead, if you try to keep calm and focus your energy on something else, it gives you a much better chance of coming back to that one thing that you couldn't figure out and actually getting it done later. The next piece of advice that I've got for you is the most important one, in my opinion, and if you take a single tip away from this video, I genuinely hope that it's this one. I know editors who will learn how to do something, whether it's like making a motion graphic or some sort of effect or whatever, and then they're just gonna keep doing it in what feels like the hardest way possible. And it almost feels like they start wearing it like a badge of honor, but I kind of get it in a way, because if you've spent a ton of time on learning a complicated way to do something, and then you realize that there might be like an easier way to do that same thing, it can end up making you feel like you've wasted a lot of your own time. But editing can be difficult, and there are a lot of parts to it, and if you're gonna be doing absolutely everything on your own, it can be especially overwhelming. So I genuinely believe that one of the biggest favors you can do yourself as an editor is to simplify the process as much as you can wherever possible. Not only can it make your life a lot easier, but it's a skill that you're gonna need if you want to keep working as an editor long term, and it's one that people are gonna appreciate more than you think. The more videos you edit, the more you're gonna realize that there are things that you need to keep doing over and over again for all of them, and you're also going to be able to figure out which parts of the editing process you enjoy more. So once you've done that, the best thing you can do is to figure out how to spend less time on the parts that you don't enjoy so that you can spend more on the ones that you do. And obviously, I mean doing it in a way where it kind of balances out so that you don't have to sacrifice the quality of the final product. So in practical terms, that could be something like using the power bins in Resolve for assets that you find yourself using over and over again for multiple videos, creating power grades to speed up the color grading process, or making presets in the Fairlight page for faster audio processing. And these are all things that I've talked about in other videos on my channel, so you can go and check them out after this one. But another example of what I'm talking about could be all of the products that I've been using from the sponsor of this video, which is Motion VFX. I've used assets from them in pretty much all of the videos that I've made over the past year, and the reason for that is that creating titles, motion graphics, and effects isn't really part of video editing that I enjoy that much. But by using some of the plugins from Motion VFX, I'm able to get a high quality result while saving time that I can then spend on other aspects of my videos, like storytelling or trying to deliver information in a better way. So using their stuff is essentially my way of simplifying the process for myself, and I genuinely believe their products can help a lot of you out there do the same thing as well. Plus, if you've been thinking of picking up anything from Motion VFX, they're currently running a huge sale through the month of November that can end up saving you a ton of money. You can use the code that's on screen right now at checkout for 30% off, and they're also going to be running an even bigger sale each week of up to 50% on some of their plugins, so you can keep a lookout for those as well. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, you can feel free to check out their sale by using my link in the description below, and if you end up buying anything, you're going to be supporting me and my channel, so I appreciate it. My next piece of advice is going to be one that's probably going to sound a little bit obvious to some of you, but it's actually something that a lot of people underestimate, and that's getting a second opinion whenever you're unsure about something. A lot of the times when you find yourself stuck on an edit could be because you're unsure if something feels right and like it fits. In those moments, having someone else look at what you're working on and sharing their opinion can be really useful. And here's a little pro tip. Try asking people who don't know anything about the technical side of video editing what they think. Like honestly, in some cases, hearing the point of view of someone who's closer to the side of the audience than they are to the creative side of things can be exactly what you need to break through that creative block. I've mentioned this in some of my videos before, but a regular person is gonna care about like entirely different things that go into a project than another editor will. It might give you like a completely new perspective and a bunch of new ideas that you can experiment with until you potentially land on something that's just much better than what you had before. Of course, you don't want to just like blindly follow all of their recommendations. You obviously still need to be able to tell apart good pieces of feedback from the bad ones. But if you're stuck anyways, just trust me and give it a shot. The next one is pretty short again, and it actually goes a little bit against the first tip that I gave you at the start of the video. But what I'm talking about is that you need to learn to trust your intuition whenever it's time to improvise. Having a solid plan is great, and like 98% of the time, that's going to be the key to a good edit. But every so often, you're going to be in a situation where you realize that certain parts of the plan look much better on paper than they actually do in practice. And that's when it's time to go a little bit off script and see what your problem-solving skills can do for the project. I feel like this is something that beginner editors are gonna have a little bit of a harder time with, because learning to trust your gut is definitely like a confidence thing, and it's gonna come with experience. But honestly, every now and then, improvising and trying something that might feel like it's a little bit too out there is the perfect way to get your creativity flowing again. So I really hope that you were able to take something away from this video. And hopefully these pieces of advice are something that you end up using in practice whenever you edit videos in the future. If you've got any other tips like the ones I shared that you think could be useful to other people, feel free to drop them in the comments below. As always, I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.